Greetings everybody, welcome to Shonsky's Garage. Today I'm down in my Southwest Florida condo, and this garage is typical of what you see in Florida. It's a 20 by 22, so you're really limited by how much space you have. But I am fortunate that I have a two-story condo and I have this little grotto here to be able to put some stuff. And then also I have this little tool shed or workshop area here, which is really nice. So I don't have a whole lot of things that are in the way out here other than stuff you just kind of use on a daily basis or irregular basis. So that's pretty cool. I wanted to show you my new car. I had my GT350. I bought that in October of 17, and honestly, I was kind of tired of the whole large car Mustang. You know, need a lot of room to really let her go. This car is a dual clutch, so it's super easy to drive, and it's really quick, which is fun for 90% of the time. It's not a hyper fast car. It's not going to get you into legal felony areas and in trouble and whatever. It's just fun. So that's what I like about it. And today I'm going to change the oil for the first time. So a little background on this car. So my GT350 had approximately 7,000 miles on it, and this car, and it was a 17. I traded it for this as a 15 with little 4,500 miles on it, mint condition. This car retailed for more. You know, it probably wasn't the smartest move per se, but it was a easy move, without money out of the pocket and that type of thing. So I'm gonna change oil today. I'm gonna put in Amsoil, and I'm gonna go the full year, because I won't put that many miles on it. I'll be lucky to put 5,000 miles on it. So I'm confident with that 12-month oil change schedule that Amsoil has on their Signature Series. And so let's get going. So I tried to use the ramps, but the tires it was too slick on this floor, so I couldn't get any traction. Didn't have anything to wedge the ramps against, so I'm going to do plan B, which is basically lift it from the side. And you can just see there's a couple pads into the bottom of the carbon fiber tub here, and I'm going to try to find a board to stretch along there, or to just use both of those and lift up the whole side with my floor jack. So here's the car on the side with the floor jack, and again, I couldn't get the car up on the ramps. I think next time I'm going to make a couple pieces of wood, from the base over here to support the car ramps. That would be easier, just to get the back up on that. And it's a smaller jack. It's kind of a piece of crap. And so here's the underside, and you can see there's a pad under there, just like this right here, and that's a jacking point. That's a strong point, and this whole tub obviously is probably 3/4 of the car in length, and it really is quite strong. And you can see the shield of the underneath the engine and transmission, and that's got to come off. There's 4, 8, 10, there's 12 fasteners, but here you can see the rest of the car underneath. It's kind of interesting, kind of unusual. Definitely this is where the money shot is, right? This is the beauty of this car. Really cool, really intricate. Got to get at this underneath here. This rocker is horrible looking. I was having fun this week driving it, but some crappy weather, but I think it'll clean up nice. And yeah. So here's the front suspension of the Alfa 4C, and I needed to get up in that little door right here. And I noticed when I bought the car, as soon as I got on the highway, I noticed that the hood here was lifting, and I immediately took it back to the dealer. Of course, the guy didn't know anything about it. He was a private And then we kind of played around with it. We knew it wasn't gonna fly off, because upon further research on my own, I discovered how to take this hood off. And obviously you need to access certain things. The radiators under here, it's a big box, your footwell, but then also your master cylinder reservoirs up here. So and then when I did the research, there was a stud here and a nut on both sides, and that side was tight, and we could see that this was a little loose. So you know, again, for the research, I determined that there is a little door here, and it's held on by a 13 millimeter nut, and yep, it was loose. And that's another thing about these cars, is that I discovered upon researching, is that you know, there are issues with nuts being loose. In fact, I guess there was a service advice bulletin for the dealers, and so I might investigate that. But you know, I don't like dealers touching my car, so I'm going to go around and just go through things. But this is the front suspension. As you can see, it's a double upper and lower wishbone with a coilover, and uses a Brembo caliper, and these pin set rotors, very similar to my GT350. These are made in Germany. Not sure if they're different than the ones on my, in terms of the manufacturer. They look very similar, smaller, but this car weighs 1,300 pounds less than my GT350. Non-adjustable suspension, and here's the rack, which of course is not powered. So here's the front wheel off of the 4C, and these wheels, according to the window sticker, was ordered and as an option, and $2,500. They're a forged wheel, and they're Italian, so you can see right here, Italy, and it also says Alfa Romeo somewhere. I saw that. Right here, got Alfa Romeo. Tires are really minuscule compared to what you see on most cars of today. It's a Pirelli P6, P7, I'm sorry, P0, and I believe they're a 205, yeah, 205/40 ZR18, and a very classic Alfa with the circles, and I mean, pretty light. I mean, compared to what I had on the front of that GT350. Oh God, heavy cast aluminum wheels, 295s, and very expensive tires. I'm really, that was one of the big things I did not like about the GT350. For autocrossing, I wanted to run a different set of wheels and tires, and it's not typical GT350 wheel or Mustang GT wheel will fit on there, so very expensive. Yeah, so just cleaning things up. 24 hours, 2019. You can see it's raining there like crazy. It's going to be over in about an hour and a half or so, and it's raining down here in Fort Myers. But I wanted to point out a little something more about this suspension that's interesting. You can see the carbon fiber tub comes all the way to here. You can see this. I mean, so it's your foot in there. I mean, that's footwell. That's how short this front end is, and how close you are to the front access. And you can see how the upper and lower control arms are mounted right to the tub, as is the coilover. Really interesting. Rack is in front of the tub, as is some obviously crash things that are meant to go bye-bye when you hit something. So that's the crush zone. It's about, well, let's say about 30 inches or so, 31 inches. Now the back is seemingly a little more rudimentary, but it has a lot of interesting aspects. It's a strut, you know, simple strut, and that's mounted to this aluminum subframe that's connected to the firewall, which is about here. So this is aluminum substructure, and what's interesting about this is that it uses a radius rod here. Actually, I want to call this a spherical rod to adjust the toe in and toe out. And if you look at that control arm, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but the control arm is really really interesting. It must be from this point here to this over here must be 28 inches. And of course that mounts right underneath here on the aluminum spindle. And you know, so you know, with the typical strut, the way you can adjust the camber is by, you know, working with this, and then you got your toe in and toe out down here. Again, taking a look underneath, you can see, you get a better look at how that spherical rod end is, and this control arm, how long that is. The rear end is really benign, I tell you. The thing just hooks up. Not that you're putting a lot of power. I mean, it's about 250 foot-pounds of torque. But the way this car rides, I've never felt it really harsh. Of course, we're talking about Florida, so the roads aren't as bad as up north. But you have this rear deflector down here, this air dam, which is interesting. You got some downforce, which is nice, taking advantage of this mid-engine design and this low floor. And very interesting. Exhaust is pretty skimpy. I know there's an aftermarket with down pipe and exhaust pipes that is made by Magnaflow. It's about $750. Not a fan of these ends. Yeah, this looks kind of goofy. The Magnaflow is definitely looks a little cooler, and it might pick up a couple horses just by having that better down pipe. Basically, motor will build boost a little quicker, a little more efficiently. So yeah, moving on. So a note about the wheels. The fronts are an 18 by 7 and the rear is a 19 by 8. And we mentioned earlier that the front is a 205/40 ZR18 and we have a 235/35 ZR19 in the rear. And it's kind of interesting how proportionally it looks pretty good in the car, because you know, you kind of have this body line that just sort of like, you know, it's a big area in the back, and I think that 19 really fills the area. And that, you know, no doubt there's some functionalities to that as well in terms of traction. Thing just does hook up. It's amazing. Thing is so quick. But anyway, these were an option on the car. So I got the rear cover off to gain access to the drain plug for changing oil, and this is the top side. So this is between, you know, the engine and the tranny and the ground, and you can see there's some creative ducting here. This is kind of like aimed at the actually at the dry clutch area, sitting here on the driver's side. And not sure what this is, or that NACA duct is used for, but we'll take a look underneath there. And I'm going to go ahead and just flip this. A lot of crud under there. And that's the lower. So this is the rear. So I cleaned the other side of the tray here. I didn't really do, I mean, just loosen up road debris that got underneath there and vacuumed it up. Still some things that are loose on there. And then underneath I basically took a detail cleaner, and of course those water spots are just stained in there because this thing, I'm sure it gets warm, hot, and yeah, so I mean, you know, it's something you're never going to really see, but as long as I know that it's that I cleaned it, you know, clean the inside, clean the outside, I'm good to go with that. Now underneath, it's kind of interesting, this car. So when you consider this car, you know, what is it? It's a transverse 4-cylinder with a twin clutch manual box, right? Auto manual. And so essentially, if you think of like a Boxster or a Cayman and the way that those are set up, the transmission, those are true mid-engine. This is kind of a, not exactly really true mid-engine, because if you look at the center point, the axis point of the axle, the transmission half shafts are in line with those hubs, right? The transmission output is basically kind of behind the transmission, but not like you would in a traditional sense. I think of mid-engine, I think the engine typically is longitudinally laid out with a transaxle behind the engine and with half shafts, and that's true mid-engine. And so this is you know, it's a front-wheel drive based, you know, configuration applied to a mid-engine. And what they did was then is they put the gas tank in here. They put the fuel tank right between this and the bulkhead. So everything is back here, whereas a Boxster came in, they're up front. And I thought that was kind of weird when I first put fuel in here. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Well, looking underneath of it and really considering how the car is designed, it's not surprising. So you can kind of see underneath here. So here's the clutch, output, and the transmission, and the engine. So you can see where the crank is basically here. The center line of the crank is here, and the center line of the hub is here. Porsche, whether it's a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder flat engine, is laid out that way, more forward than this, and then the transmission kind of comes back this way, with the output in this area in line with the hubs. So kind of interesting. This duct over here, I noticed. See this? There's like this duct on the outside. It's comes in through here, and it actually blows air into the transmission area. And then there's also a ducting on the lower of the pan, I noticed, that also ducts air towards here. So obviously this dry clutch setup does get hot. And the NACA duct, essentially that believe that cools the turbo, which is well, it cools this area. It comes up through here and cools this area. And another duct that actually comes over here and cools this area. Starters right there, real easy to service. This output, this is the motor, this is the pan, and they have this bracket, this outfit which mounts the bearing for the half shaft going that way, and then there's a center half shaft that's mounted between here, and so the half shafts are equal length, of course. And yeah, interesting. The oil drain plug was pretty tight. I had to take my foot, I had to get there with my foot to get it loosened, and I knew it was synthetic because I could smell it from the dipstick, and it still has nice viscosity, but it could be original, and so it had to come out. I just need to know where my situation is, the oil, before I can go forward and put what I want to run in there, and then know my intervals, so not second guessing what was ever put in there. So starting out new. We're gonna get this oil filter off. Oh, flashlight here. Oh, God damn it. Alright. Son of a bitch. Really? Fucking kidding me? This way. That was a bitch to get off. Couldn't get it off with my hand. I got a good grip with a glove. I just couldn't. There we go. She's coming. I think. No, it's not. Oh yes, it is good. Right, these factory filters are ridiculously tight. There we go, let her drip on there. I don't know. I mean, I would never go this long on the first oil change. They do run synthetic from the factory in 6 quarts, but still, I would do that within the first year, the very most, even if I don't even drive the car. I never would keep oil in there for more than 1 year. So there's no guarantee that's the case or not. I don't know, but let's see this filter. Looks like a factory part. No. Oh. You know what? This might not be factory. A man. Oh, made in Germany. This is not factory. Someone did do a little change. I take it all back. But, it's still, I don't know how good it is. I'd just rather change it and get on my own schedule, so. Alright, we'll clean up and get a filter under and top her off. So one note on the oil change. Essentially here I had 4 quarts of Amsoli Signature Series 550, and that's for my GT350. I had 4 quarts left over because I would buy it by the case, and that car needed 10 quarts. I did 2 oil changes, so I've got a total of 4 left over. And I went locally here and picked up 2 030 weight to make up the difference. And it's going to be a little heavier than the 540, but with the additional properties of the cold weight, you know, I guess, and it's not as if I'm blending 2 different manufacturers here, although I've done that in the past. But if I'm going to go a full year between changes, I wanted to at least stay with the one Signature Series type. So the other thing I do is once I pour the quart into the car, you always have you know, a little bit left over on the bottom of the bottle. So I basically just take time and make sure I get everything out of that and then pour it in whatever I can back into the car. While I've got the car in the air, I also took the opportunity to clean the wheel wells out, and these are like a matte, like a matted fabric for sound detonation, which I think is a great idea for road noise. Although this car is not the quietest car you ever want to ride in, but it's so this is nice before I wash the car and clean you know, the rotor here up, and then clean the caliper. And now back here, what I did was I basically took this, which is a wheel cleaner, and out of the way, and then just basically kind of get in there with something like a brush and just loosen up all that road grime that attaches itself to the car. Well, this is missing a bolt here. Kind of curious why that would be missing. And of course I have chips along here. So clearly this paint chip's pretty easy. 4,000 miles, so I need to get some touch-up paint for that. But yeah, I think this is something that I'll be doing every year, is just take the wheels off and, you know, get at the whatever I can in the chassis. I also wanted to clean underneath this rocker here. It's really bad, before I hand wash the car. But so this is just a matter of getting this loose with a brush and kind of get the idea. I'm just going to grab a respirator so I'm not inhaling this crap. But yeah. So to recap here in this mid-engine car, if you think of where this rear caliper is, that's about the center line, roughly speaking, of the center line of the crankshaft. So yeah, it's mid-engine, but it's sort of like you know, it's a front engine based drivetrain transmitted to the rear, and you know, presumably it would be reversed, because you'd want this engine behind the front axle. This is ahead of the rear axle, which makes sense. Fuel tank right here. Foot box like to here. Radiator box. There's no room for a trunk up in this thing. And I will be taking that hood off probably next year in order to essentially do a complete drain and refill on the brake fluid. The car will be 5 years old then, which would make sense. And otherwise, yeah, wheels are clean, suspension's clean, wheel wells are clean, oil's changed. Now it's on the other side. So you have it in the D mode here with this DNA, so this is the dynamic mode. The TFT instruments there, it turns to like a kind of a red. And just kind of turns up the heat a little bit, makes it a little more, the shifts are a little more firm. But yeah, the car, I mean, look at the average miles per gallon, 28.9, and that's better than my Boxster. That's really good. And of course, it's lighter. I mean, it's 500 pounds lighter than a Boxster. I mean, I would never dream of getting on the GT350. The best I ever could get on that was 20 miles to the gallon. More like 15 on average. 16 on average. Kind of driving how I'm driving this. So cannot complain. What really strikes me about this car is that it took a group of people within FCA in Italy to create a car using certainly a lot of parts bins available, things such as the transmission and a lot of off-the-shelf things, the motor, and then they built it around this tub. So therein lies the aspect of it being a pocket Ferrari. It has that one-off sort of uncompromising stiff tub that I'm sitting in, and it is uncompromising because it's you give up a lot of different amenities, but what it gives you though is rigidity and without noise. I mean, without like metallic sort of resonance. So it actually has its own insulating properties. So there's no insulation in this car, and it is loud because the glass is thin. This is just a just a simple fiber panel, and then there's just a plastic composite sheet on top. That's all that ceiling is. And but the interior on this particular one is really cool because it has the leather covered dash and the doors and the finished carbon fiber that meets your eye on the inside, and it has these little mats that screw into the floors, and it's like a race car basically set up for the street. And it's kind of what the vision I had for my Daytona Coupe when I created that, or put that together. I wanted a resto mod version of a 1965 race car. Well, this is a contemporary race car-ish, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't think they campaign these in any sort of competition, but it's a cut rate Ford GT. Twin clutch, turbocharged engine, bespoke chassis, and so I mean that car costs what, $500,000. This was 45,000 used, 46,000 used with 5,000 miles, and it's again, when you take it in the context of what it is, it's pretty amazing. And it's too bad they're not more popular, but I don't really care if they're popular or not. I like it. It's popular enough that it's not too esoteric in terms of parts availability and that type of thing. Yeah, I did find an oil filter right at Advance Auto. It was a Mobile one. I don't have the part number. I'll list it in the notes, and the torque wrench size and the socket size for the drain plug. So I'll be listing all those things in there. Let's take a look at that. But interesting car.